Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar this afternoon on the Healing Library. My name is Ryan Perry. I'm the Digital Collections Librarian here at the Central New York Library Resources Council, or CLRC for short. I'll be hosting this webinar on behalf of CLRC. And so if you have any technical issues or anything, feel free to send me a message. Speaking of which, you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, there are Q&A and chat features within Zoom. You are all encouraged to ask your questions as they come to you as Megan is presenting. But Megan will wait until the end to answer them. So just feel free to enter your questions anytime and we can get to them at the end. Also, there's a chat module which you can use to discuss anything you'd like. And there'll also be a couple of points where you'll be asked to weigh in. So those are both located at the bottom of the screen. So if you move your mouse a little bit around, they should show up. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Megan Emery, who is experienced designer and coordinator at the Chattanooga Public Library. She was recently a graduate of the Syracuse University iSchool, and she also several years ago wrote a very interesting sounding book called Cooking Up Programs Tweens and Teens Will Love, Recipes for Success. So she's been pretty busy over the last few years, and we're really curious to hear more about this project, and hope all of you are as well. All yours, Megan.
Thanks, Ryan. So hello, everyone, and good afternoon. And I want to apologize first for my slightly scratchy voice. It is allergy season, high allergy season here in Tennessee. So I've got my hot tea, I have a bunch of water, and hopefully it doesn't irk you as much as it's irking me lately. So first of all, I wanted to thanks, Ryan, for the awesome introduction. And I also wanted to just put a face to the voice so you could understand a little bit about who the heck is talking to you today. So this is me, I'm Megan. And as Ryan mentioned, I am currently the experience designer and coordinator for the Chattanooga Public Library, sort of a fancy pants way of saying I think all the time about design thinking, whether it's the way that people are going to come through the door and begin experiencing that program, the kind of collisions I want people to have with one another while they're at the program, or at what level to involve the public in the programming that we're running at the Chattanooga Public Library. Also, super exciting, I'm getting more and more into outreach programming and embedded programming, which is one of my passions. So I'm really stoked on my job right now. My book that Ryan mentioned, thanks Ryan, sweet shout out, is Cooking Up Programs Teens and Tweens Will Love, Recipes for Success. It's sort of a, well, you can tell what it is, but it's laid out in cookbook format. So it explains the amount of time needed, the recipes required, and step-by-step instructions for how to replicate these programs. I've been in public libraries for over, actually, I think it's 11 or 12 years now, at 3 different public libraries in 3 different states, landing finally here in Chattanooga. And just in case we have any Twitter peeps in the audience, I am Bibly, Ryan and his organization are CLRC, and the project today has the hashtag #TheHealingLibrary with a capital T, capital H, and capital L. What we're going to cover today is a variety of things. So we're going to start just with an introduction of what the heck the Healing Library is to sort of get you understanding the basic idea about what we've put together. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how the kits were created, the contents of the kits, and then we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive into the social emotional learning that can take place when the kits are utilized. Finally, we're going to finish up with how to download and get started creating your own kits. And then we're going to go over some common concerns that people have when they hear everything I'm about to tell you, as well as what I think are some pretty creative solutions to those common problems. So let's dive right in. The goal, one final thing before I jump. I am going to read my slides in case we have anyone in the audience today with any visual impairments. So our goal was the Healing Library has been developed to start families on their unique journey of healing during periods of trauma or immediately following periods of trauma. 3 kits have been developed to assist families with healing in a healthy way while teaching parents the skills of looking critically at picture books and utilizing them to communicate with children. And that sounds awesome when you put it together, but during the year plus that it took us to build this, we recognize that a lot of what librarians know isn't necessarily known by parents. And it's pretty unfair as a parent or someone who loves a child to be put in a position of trauma yourself and then have the added layer of, oh my gosh, how do I talk to this person? Now I have all this research to do. And so our hope is that it eases all of that for caregivers and community members who are working with families. The 3 topics that the kits currently cover include Alzheimer's in your family. So whether or not a member of your family has developed Alzheimer's or simply someone that your family loves. The second is the death of a pet. And the third is the death of a loved one. And you can see the 3 suitcases on the right in this picture. When assembled to their fullest, each kit fits inside a rolly suitcase. So I want to kick this off. It's always hard to do one of these things when you can't see people in the audience. And I'm I wish you could see me on this end. I'm throwing my hands around and I'm nodding my head. So we're going to do a couple of polls during this webinar just so I can check in with everybody. So here's our first one. I'll read everything to you and then I'll give you guys a minute to respond. And from there, we'll take a look at the results. So who here feels that their communities would benefit from healing experiences that revolve around one of these topics? Ryan's going to pop up a poll and you can click all of the topics that you think would be relevant within your community. So Alzheimer's in your family, and or the death of a pet, and or the death of a loved one. I always feel like the Jeopardy music should be playing during this section whenever we do a poll. And the secret behind the scenes stuff that you can't see is when we have a poll, I actually get to drink a little more of my herbal tea and coat my throat. Okay, so we've got just a few more seconds. And Ryan, you can go ahead and close that poll. All right. Oh, great. Okay, so we can see from the results, 81% of you thought that Alzheimer's and your family would be a kit that your community would benefit from. 81% of you felt that the death of a pet would be something that your community would benefit from. And 94% of you felt that the death of a loved one would be something that your community would benefit from. And actually, these results track pretty on point with the downloads that we've been receiving for the kits thus far. The project launched in October of this past year, and it has experienced just over 1,000 downloads in those 6 months, and it's exactly in that order. The death of a loved one has received the highest results. The death of a pet has received the second highest downloading results. And finally, Alzheimer's is the third in. So you guys are completely on track, and it seems like with what everybody else is experiencing. Okay, so we're gonna do one more poll before we get started. And this is just sort of a humanizing opportunity for us to all be honest with one another. I'm wondering who here feels intimidated or overwhelmed by that role of therapist that seems more and more to be creeping into our job as librarians. And even though we're impartial and even though we don't ask questions like why, or we don't probe too deeply in an effort to respect privacy, more and more these things just seem to be happening to us. So I wonder if we could pop up another poll and you could have a choice between, oh my gosh, holy smokes, yes, I need a nap, this is exhausting me, or nah, it's a piece of cake, I deal with this all the time, I'm really comfortable with it. Or finally, actually, I'm a therapist because I've had therapists take these webinars before. I don't want to discriminate against anyone. We're going to give this one about the same amount of time as the last one. So feel free to change your answer if you have to. It's fine to start out confident and go back to holy smokes, or feel holy smokes and then realize afterwards, like, you know what? I'm actually really good at this. I feel okay. Okay, we'll give this one just a couple more seconds. Lock in your answers, as it were. Okay, Ryan, if we want to take a look at these results now. Oh, okay, good. So this is also what we normally see for these results. Yes, most of us are kind of exhausted by all of this added new information that's being asked of us. And we have one therapist in the group. Sweet, welcome. We're happy to have you here. Feel free to chime in and answer some questions in the chat if people have them. But again, what you're experiencing for the most part, yeah, a lot of us are feeling kind of overwhelmed by either the caliber of questions that are being asked of us in a sort of therapeutic manner, a therapist manner these days, or the volume of those questions that are being asked, or just the complications of, you know, our job and our world are colliding a lot right now with the rise of fake news, with the rise of student activism, and those of us involved with families certainly know that family lives are busier than ever. And so it's no surprise that these questions are coming up, but it is a challenge for many of us. So don't feel like you're doing anything wrong, any of you. Okay. So let's jump into a little bit about the creation of the kits and how they came to be. The origin story goes a little something like this. As Ryan mentioned, I just graduated from Syracuse University's iSchool program. And as much as I love studying and learning things, like I'm sure all of you do, I got to a point where I had a choice and I could either do a couple of internships or I could take more classes. And so I decided to do a self-guided, self-designed internship and create something that would potentially have an impact on my field rather than just studying more about my field. I had been experiencing that typical grad school stress that I'm sure many of you are common with. And in addition to that, my personal life had had quite a bit of trauma occur actually over the course of the last 3 years. So the day that I got into grad school, my father died, and that was sort of the beginning of 2 years of a lot of soul searching and recognition of healthy behaviors and coping mechanisms. And even as a relatively, you know, well-to-do, privileged person, I found myself struggling and running into these issues that I just couldn't solve on my own. And so when I came out on the other side, a healthier person, a happier person, I realized that I had the opportunity to sort of take these two experiences, the want to create an impact in my field and the want to share some of these strategies that I had found with a larger audience. And so this project was born. A friend of mine who is brilliant, and we'll talk about in a second, had created a beautiful storytime kit for a book that we're going to talk about a little later. And it was about a man whose father develops Alzheimer's. And the man also has a son, and about the changing relationship between his son and his father. And it's really gorgeous. It's called What a Beautiful Morning. And it inspired me, and I realized this is who I need to work with. This is somebody that can help me bring this idea to life. And so Kirsten and I got to work on things. Now, wellness is sort of a hot word right now, and I wanted to create something with a little meat on its bones. You know, we're librarians, so I wanted something with research, something meatier that people could dig into. And I have this love of non-traditional lending. I've been doing it for years, since I first started, but really with a higher intensity when I worked at my last public library in Lewiston, Maine. And we'll talk more about that in a moment too. So I have this love of non-traditional lending, and I thought to myself, we can create something that is meaningful, that is rooted in wellness, that incorporates design thinking principles so that this is a self-guided experience where families feel that their values and their ideals are being respected. And so that took me to my next step. I realized I had to assemble a crack team of people who could assist me with this. So you already know me, and there's another crazy haircut I've had. But this is Kirsten, who I was just mentioning. I call Kirsten an independent children's publishing advocate. She's half of the brilliant team that created Curious City, where kids and books meet. And I'll share a website with you in a moment. But basically, she's a creator of free and fabulous storytime kits and downloadable lessons, as well as lending libraries and a beautiful program on immigration that are all of her projects are socially important and rooted in beautiful books, especially those that are independently published and don't necessarily get the kind of marketing budgets that some of our best sellers in kids land get. So if you're interested in any of her free materials, and you should be, you can download anything you want from her website here, curiouscitydpw.com. Feel free to surf around there or write her an email. She's amazing to talk to. And if you ever get the chance to hear her speak, please, please, please go for it. She's hilarious. She's warm and wonderful. Okay, next we realized, being a school project, I had to have a librarian involved. And so I knew exactly the man I wanted to be involved. He was my previous director of children's services at the Lewiston Public Library, where I had been working in Maine. And I like to say David was non-traditionally lending before it was cool. He was involved in lending telescopes. And my favorite project that we had going on, we lent story times as well to daycares. But my favorite was that we had American dolls that we lent out, and we had a really high Somali refugee population, as well as Djiboutian and some other war-ravaged nations. We had this high population of refugees in Lewiston, and so we began lending dolls that were reflective of our refugee populations. And even just after I left, some teenagers who were interested in fashion design began making hijabs and more traditional Somalian clothing for the dolls. And so it's just a really great project. And so I had this great background, and I knew that David would not only believe in the mission of what we were doing, but he's a bit of a goofball, as you may be able to tell from the picture. So I knew that he would have the enthusiasm that Kirsten and I shared, and he would get what we were talking about. And he's a fellow animal lover. I don't know if you noticed Kirsten's giraffe back there, but we're all sort of in love with animals. Finally, Kirsten recommended at one point when we were talking and just sort of getting each other excited about the project, that what we really needed was to have somebody from the medical profession involved to ensure that what we were creating was responsibly done and accurate, safe for families to use, and not going to accidentally intend harm when what we're trying to do is help. And I knew just the woman that I wanted to have involved. So I reached out to Bonnie Thomas, who's a brilliant holistic children's art and play therapist, as well as an author of several titles that you can see here. If you're looking to do any non-traditional lending involved with healing and you aren't sure how to start, I would recommend that very last one, Toxins and Antidotes. It's a therapeutic deck of exploring life experiences, as it mentions. And what's beautiful is that on one side of the card, it has a problem that you're facing, and on the other side of the card, it has a potential solution or activity that you can engage in to try and work your way through it. Beautiful product. Bonnie luckily said yes, and so we had our crack team assembled. And furthermore, Bonnie's a bit of a, like, the best kind of weirdo. So she has a tendency to feed the little woodland creatures in her yard. And actually, if you see the chipmunk on the right as she's reading her book in her hammock, that chipmunk actually followed her to the hardware store and sort of just trails around her. She's basically Snow White, but living among us. So it's brilliant, and I love her. All right, so after we got our team together, I'll skip over the boring part of about 7 months of work, straight to the end where we had the contents of our kits finalized and created. When we open them up, you can see there are 2 binders in each kit, as well as, well, in this case, a suitcase full of different activities. So in those, we'll start with what's in the binders and we'll move to the activities, and I think we'll go back to the binders. But if you take a look at the binders, you'll see there's a red binder and a black binder. The red binder just says the death of a pet, for the example on the one of the right. And the one on the left in that same suitcase says family materials. So our red binder is a guide for librarians in the very beginning of how to put this kit together, how to begin lending it to families in a sensitive way, how to respond to families who have just returned the kit, and how to replenish the kit with materials after it's been returned. And we'll talk about that a little more in a moment. The guide for families is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a single sheet of paper that explains what they have in their hands, how to begin using it, and just tries to comfort them. Because as I mentioned, you know, a lot of times when these situations have occurred, yes, a child is experiencing the grief process, but also their caregivers or parents are also in that process. And so everything is written in a very considerate and sensitive, delicate way. Following those, you dive into the rest of the meat that's in the family's materials. So first up is a discussion guide. And this guide goes over whatever the difficult topic is and ways to begin approaching it in a conversational way with your family and specifically with your children. It may review things like the steps of the grief process. It may review ideas like when it's okay to sort of fib or tell a little white lie, such as if your pet that has passed away was potentially violently killed, when to say, how much to say, and where you can sort of draw that line and what's not appropriate to tell children and won't actually help them beyond the basic information. So sort of just tips for getting started and actually discussing this as a family. Following up that, we have our healing activities. So the activities guide, we put this together to cover the exploration of a range of emotions and a range of responses to whatever trauma your family is experiencing. And included with each of these, you can see on the right, we have our write-ups about how to engage in the activity. It's sort of an instructional how-to, like my book was. But included in the kits are ready-to-use materials so that, again, your parents who are, or your caregivers who are experiencing this with the child don't have to then go on a shopping trip or raid their cabinets. Instead, everything is ready to go so that when they find the exact activity that they feel their child needs in that moment, it's ready to go, they can dive right in. And the one you see on the right is for our Death of a Pet kit. This particular activity has to do with making a memory book or a memory box to celebrate the memory of your pet that has passed away. And included are things like washi tape and stamp pads, scissors, ribbon, markers, crayons, tissue papers. There are some scrapbooking stickers at the bottom that are positive words or animal related, and some little stamps there too, as well as a glue stick. It basically provides everything except the box. And included also in here, if you wanted to create a memory book, are some folded in half pieces of paper and a stapler so that you could create a small book on the spot. Next up in the kits is something we call acts of kindness. So whereas the activities guide is more about responding to the trauma that you're experiencing, the acts of kindness guide is more about being proactive and giving back to your community and taking your trauma and turning it into something positive. So this particular page that we're showing here has to do with the death of a loved one. And the first activity it's mentioning is being kind to others who may be grieving the loss of your loved one. And so it could be extended family members, it could be friends of the person, or it could be caregivers who are especially close to that person and now that they've passed are also experiencing your loss. The next section of the kit is one of my favorites. It's our community helpers section. And so this is more of a general sense of nationally or locally what's basically available to everyone. And so in this one, you can see the first couple of people that are mentioned are school helpers and and there are subcategories under that say things like teachers and staff, or it may say your school counselor. And even if your individual school doesn't have a counselor, chances are your county does, or there will be state level help available as well. And so it gets people, again, comfortable with the idea of who's available in a larger network to their child than maybe they'd and to themselves that they maybe didn't realize without having to go out and do all of that research themselves. Now, what I especially love about this section is our hope and our suggestion is that librarians actually add into this section with local flyers or local resources that are available and bolster it and really make it special and about the wellness community that exists within your own neighborhood. Okay, finally, the picture books with discussion guides. So we have a variety of picture books that we curated ourselves. I probably personally read over I would guess 350 picture books to find something that was, first of all, well-written, second of all, compassionate, third, was reflective of different races or just differences that exist within all of our experiences, which is really, really difficult, hence having to read 350. So at the end, we narrowed it down to a few books, which I will share with you in just a second. But after we created the books, it's like I said before, we realized not everyone knows how to read a picture book the way a librarian does. And so we decided that we had to create discussion guides to go along with every book. Each discussion guide has discussion prompts that while you're reading the story, you can engage with your child in a further, deeper conversation. Or there are observations that you can make as a parent about the way that your child is reacting to the book, or the reactions that your child is having to those discussion prompts, so that you as a caregiver are better able to dive back into that discussion guide or the other books or the activities and understand what your child may need and what the kid has available to assist you in moving forward in your healing journey. And then finally, there are references back to the activities mentioned in the activity guide. Again, so that you don't have to say, oh, what book was that where we read the thing about they had a burial service for their fish, but they did that one special thing. No, it's actually written into the guide. So you can say, don't forget to check out the activities guide after to understand how you can participate in what's happening in the book with your own family. So here are the books that we chose finally for the death of a loved one. I'll give everybody a chance to, pull out their smartphones and take a picture or write stuff down. And I will mention that in this book, we tried to find a variety of, again, different types of loss that families had experienced. And so in something like something very sad happened, which we refer to a lot, the father has died in that book. In Missing Mommy, obviously the mother has died in that book. There are others that are simpler ideas, like Todd Parr's The Goodbye Book, which is about saying goodbye to anyone. And then there are more complicated ideas, such as Lifetimes or Life is Like the Wind. And then we didn't want everything to be about loss, so there are other books as well, such as Rabbityness, which is about celebrating the person and who they are and what made them themselves, and In My Heart, which celebrates a range of different emotions that may be experienced. These are the books that we landed on for Alzheimer's in Your Family. So again, we were really proud to find a diverse group of books with a diverse group of cultural experiences available to our patrons who might be receiving these books. But as a smaller subject matter, it was harder to find books, and so this one only has 6. And finally, we have The Death of a Pet. This one was pretty tricky because what we were wrestling with was there are multiple kinds of pets that we have. So there are dogs and there are cats and relatively normal pets like pocket pets, such as hamsters or mice. But then there are things like snakes or fish or books that, are rather pets that haven't really had books written for them. And so the guides in this case have to fill the slack there. So instead of, a good example is Goodbye Jeepers or Goodbye Mousie. In either of those books, as you're reading, the discussion prompts will encourage you to layer in the type of pet you had or your pet's own name so that it becomes more personalized to your family's experience. All right. So now we're going to jump into some of the deeper learning stuff here. The social emotional learning that can take place when we use these kits. So what the kits are intended to do is supply our families with an introduction to a healing plan that's of their own design through discussion, sharing of stories, as in our picture books, participating in therapeutic activities, and encouraging families to continue their journey within their communities after the kit has been returned. Furthermore, it allows us as librarians to invest in the overall wellness of our communities. What the kits do not do is take the place of a therapist. Kits do not guarantee a fix for what's happened, nor do the kits turn you into a therapist. So if we look at CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, they have done a fabulous job of assisting in identifying social and emotional learning goals for schools and communities. So they have a focus on making evidence-based social and emotional learning an integral component, an integral component of learning for pre-K through high school. Their focus is on research, practice, and policy, and I have their website listed below. So if we could do another quick poll just to understand who exactly is in the room, who's familiar with what CASEL is doing, that'll help me understand how deep to dive here. So I'll give everybody 1 minute to fill this out. And if you have an other, you can go ahead and put that in the chat box. I'm just going to chug a little of this tea. Oh, great. I see we have somebody adding other. I'm going to take a quick peek over there. Oh, this is great. Okay. Great. So I'll give everybody a few more seconds to finish either adding their other or to choose their station in life when it comes to CASEL. Okay, Ryan, we can go ahead and shut that one down and take a peek at our results. Okay, so a lot of public librarians, great. Oh, and a lot of unfamiliarity, no worries. This is awesome. Okay, so we're gonna jump straight ahead, hold on. So CASEL defines social and emotional learning as the process through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and to make responsible decisions. Now, they've taken all that and they've broken it down into 5 main categories. So the first is self-management. They consider self-management the ability to accurately recognize one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behavior. The ability to accurately assess one's own strengths and limitations with a well-grounded sense of confidence, optimism, and a growth mindset. Self-management is the ability to self-regulate one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in different situations, effectively managing stress, controlling impulses, and motivating oneself. The ability to set and work towards personal and academic goals. Social awareness is the ability to take the perspective of and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds and cultures. The ability to understand social and ethical norms for behavior, and to recognize family, school, and community resources and supports. Relationship skills are the ability to establish and maintain healthy and rewarding relationships with diverse individuals and groups. The ability to communicate clearly, listen well, cooperate with others, resist inappropriate social pressure, negotiate conflict constructively, and seek and offer help when needed. And finally, responsible decision-making is the ability to make constructive choices about personal behavior and social interactions based on ethical standards, safety concerns, and social norms. The realistic evaluation of consequences of various actions, and a consideration of the well-being of oneself and others. So obviously, if you haven't figured it out by now, I'm a bit of a nerd for social psychology and wellness and libraries, and so I could go on and on forever about this. But I've decided just to create a couple of tidbits to help you relate how CASEL's 5 areas relate back to the Healing Library and how the Healing Library can support those. So in terms of self-management, our families have the ability of to recognize emotions through parent-led discussions in whatever topic that they're borrowing through discussion guides and the book discussion guides. We're creating a channel for communication with parents or other safe adults for our children through those discussion guides. And there are experiences for coping provided in the activities guide. When it comes to self-awareness, we're providing emotional identification or recognition for children through parent-led discussions using the topic discussion guide, as well as the book discussion guides included in the kit. The recognition of effective activities to reduce stress through our activities guide. And there are opportunities for self-reflection while sharing picture books on a deeper level with their parents or caregivers. In terms of social awareness, we're providing recognition of experiences, traumatic experiences, and how children relate to others through our curated selection of picture books and the parent-guided discussions through all of those guides. There is awareness of the safe adults that are for children in their worlds that are reviewed in both the parent-led discussions and in the community helpers guide. And there are opportunities to show thanks and kindness, as well as empathy, to a variety of others in the Acts of Kindness Guide. In terms of relationship skills, we provide new emotional territory and language that we create safely for families through all parts of the kit. And that's a really big one to me. We're providing a potential network of safe adults, again, for children that's reviewed in the book discussion guides, the discussion guides, and the community helpers guide. And we provide an opportunity to show kindness and give back to their greater community through the Acts of Kindness Guide. Finally, in terms of responsible decision-making, all of the families are encouraged to keep all of the handouts so that they can revisit them later. And we'll talk more about that again in a moment, but the basic idea is that if it's in that binder, they're welcome to take it out of that binder, and when they return the kit, the binder could come back completely empty, because it does no good if the families are getting some good information for 2 weeks, say, and then when they return it, they have to lose all of that. So their responsible decision-making can continue after the kit has been returned. Second, the Community Helpers Guide focuses on local support systems in order to build a network of healers after the kit is returned. And finally, our Acts of Kindness Guide encourages ways for a family to become involved with their network of caregivers during their period of trauma in meaningful ways. And that network of caregivers could be people in their neighborhood, in their schools, something on a greater national scale through chat rooms, but it's all in there. Now, if you look at this guide on the right-hand side, this awesome image that Kaysel has created, we can see social emotional learning in the center, surrounded by those 5 areas, but then around that are 3 blue rings. So they have created social emotional learning curriculum and instruction that they like to see put forth in classrooms. Beyond that, their hope is that schools will have school-wide practices and policies that reflect opportunities for children to learn this way. And then finally, the homes and communities part is where we come in. Finding ways for families and community partnerships to exist that also support these. Now, I'd love to tell you that I knew about this before I started creating the kits, but like so many other things I've done, I apparently approached it the hard way and decided to invent the wheel before I knew the wheel existed. But the good news is that it's exactly the kind of resource that the Kaysel folks are looking for. And a lot of our schools are already involving Kaysel focuses. So I'm gonna read this quick quote. There's Bonnie, amazing as always, which again, we wrote before we knew about Kaysel, but I think it plays heavily into what we've just been discussing. So she says, as a counselor, I've seen how community plays a role in people's ability to endure and even heal in the midst of loss, tragedy, and change. Libraries are key community entities that can be part of this connecting people with resources and information in times of need in a variety of ways. The Healing Library offers an encompassing resource for those looking for more than just a couple books on a topic. I'd love to see the Healing Library find a home in libraries everywhere. It is such a wonderful resource for patrons and communities. It would be a valuable tool for families and community providers. Now, there is a little controversy surrounding Kaysel. Actually, Tennessee has dropped out of participation, and a lot of times the controversy seems to be rooted in that idea of forcing therapy or psychiatry onto families or children. So my comeback to that is basically that because it is a self-guided learning experience, because it is an experience that parents can review first and then apply their own values and intuition to, for our families that are not yet on board with these ideas, the kits provide tools and research for parents so that they can move forward in a self-guided way that they feel is appropriate for their family. However, for the families that are already on board with these ideas, a variety of potentially new strategies, ideas, or networks are provided for them to have a deeper dive. So this part is the fun stuff. We're gonna quickly go over how you can download and get started creating your kits. So if we go back to Kirsten's website, curiouscitydpw.com, this is what you wind up with. And in the upper right corner is a search box. All you have to do is type in the Healing Library and click enter. Then you'll see a post that looks like this, and you'll just click on it and navigate to the Healing Library post. The fourth and final step, this is seriously so easy, is that you can click on any of these blue links and the kit will download for free instantly. Finally, you're going to go exploring, you're going to shop, and you're going to assemble the kit as you see fit for your library. So people always ask, how much does it cost to put one of these together? And the honest answer is that it varies based on how big a kit you're creating and how inclusive you want to be. But I swear, you can honestly print out your materials, find a couple old binders to put these things inside, and you could raid your craft closet, I'm willing to bet, or your supply closet, find a vessel, and you could begin lending by next week. The flip side of that is that I've been talking with a few libraries who have been writing grants so that they can really build these things out and have a professional, slick-looking operation. And so they're looking at a few $100s per kit. Then you'll want to catalog all those materials, add it to your catalog, and then simply start lending it. That was the night that we got the kits finally assembled. Finally, you can't just create these kits and expect them to start lending. You need to share the news. And so that could be through articles in your local paper, your own blog, but also I'd love to see some face-to-face happening where you actually wheel this thing out to places, because I do think people really get something out of taking a peek inside. So local professionals that we brainstormed you might want to share with include teachers, childcare centers, health specialists, funeral homes, humane societies, assisted living facilities, hospice organizations, and more. And finally, we do have that hashtag I mentioned at the beginning. We're looking for people to share the news with us. We want to highlight your stories. We're serious about what we're creating, and we love the ingenuity that we've already seen. So if you want to share anything, you can use the Healing Library hashtag freely. So as far as how to put the things together, I mentioned that you could put it together in a variety of ways. And so completely built out, they fit in a suitcase, but there's no reason that you can't do it a little bit smaller. We're about to start lending these at my library, and I actually have a meeting tomorrow to discuss what size do we want to do. And so we sort of thought of it in small, medium, and large terms. Large is the suitcase, medium is a backpack-sized kit, and small would be a large binder with all the materials inside and those sort of like 3-ring zipper pouches filled with different activities. Whatever you're going to be involved with, I encourage you to participate in some design thinking and really anticipate the needs of your users. How would they want to open it? How would they want to leave the building with it? Does it need to be branded and flashy? Or if you're experiencing Alzheimer's in your family, would you want something a little more subtle looking, like a backpack or a tote bag that's inconspicuous? So keep their needs in mind as you move forward. As far as how long to lend these things, Bonnie believes that 2 to 4 weeks is sufficient and will provide an opportunity for families to maximize their experience. Okay, so some common concerns and solutions that people typically have after they've heard everything you just heard. One size does not fit all. We're not expecting it to fit all. We know that we're all different, which means we have varying problems, but also that we have varying solutions, which is pretty exciting to me. So the first one we commonly hear has to do with storage space. Where the heck am I going to put these things? So we already talked about the suitcase or a backpack or a tote bag, but if you were to have something like a super big binder, you could actually shelve that with your books, which is kind of interesting to me. You could have a collapsible box that you don't fill and assemble until people are ready to leave with this. It could go in a gym bag or a duffel bag, or you could get creative and put it in one of those under the bed rolly tote things so it's nice and flat. Replenishing the materials. So as I mentioned before, every time the kit comes back, and this is included in the librarian's guide, the materials that are inside need to be replenished. And so you may need to reprint components or guides that are paper materials, and you may need to, well, you probably, we hope, will need to replenish the supplies in the activities kits. So potential solutions to that, again, raiding your supply closet, but also you could create an Amazon wish list. You could have a holiday supply drive. At my first public library, we used to have a holiday book drive for all those titles that I just couldn't afford, but really still wanted. And we found that they were all purchased every year on this. It was great. You could put up a poster asking for donations of things like the simple stuff, the crayons, especially after the holidays, the tissue paper, colored pencils, old scrapbook materials that maybe local groups aren't using anymore. You could look into grants. And in fact, at this point, and at the dollar amount we're talking about, you're actually looking into micro grants. And then you might consider sponsorships. Does a local hospital or hospice center or adoption center for animals want to donate those materials to you or the money so that you can continue to replenish, and they're the sponsor of that kit? Another problem we've heard is the organization won't allow for plastic activity containers. So if you are going to do a binder, I mentioned you could include just zippered pouches, but maybe you have a smaller backpack, one that a child could carry, and then maybe you have one matching it that an adult could carry. And the adult one has the binders and the books, but the child one has the activities in it. And these are some other things you could consider putting your activities inside. Some really sturdy Ziploc containers. And that, I don't mean Ziploc pouches, I mean those sort of like sandwich containers that have the rubber lids on top. You could consider pencil cases or travel-sized containers, like when we're gonna fly around on airplanes and we put our soap in little things, or maybe even spice jars are small enough to hold some of what you're looking for. Probably the big spice jars though. So if you wanna take this idea further, we actually have the project set up in a way so that you could take our materials and create your own kit. So we include the logos for download, all of the information on the fonts that we use so you can replicate the look of the kit. And basically, if you look at the contents that we've provided in all of these guides and you simply replicate them, you can rewrite these things to cover any topic that's of relevance to your community. But we don't include your time and we don't include your crack team. As far as the time goes, I stopped counting after about 180 hours when I was working on this, and that all took place in the first 3 months. As I mentioned, this has been launched for 6 months, and before that, I think I had been working on it for about a year. So it's been a year and a half. I have no idea how much time I've put into this thing total, but it will take time, especially if you're going to write considerately and carefully. And again, do the design thinking to ensure that you're approaching these topics in a sensitive and responsible way. And speaking of responsible, I highly recommend that you find your own Bonnie. So whether it's a local therapist, whether it's a school counselor, whether it's a doctor, pediatrician, somebody who can weigh in from a psychological standpoint to review your work and just ensure, yes, this is well done. Or actually, why don't we take another look at this one and consider rewriting it? So in the chat, I would love now to hear some ideas that you have about, I wish there were a healing library kit about, boom. So go ahead and lay it on me. We're gonna, again, take about 60 seconds or just whenever these sort of stop coming in, we will stop talking about them. But I'll give it a minute, so go ahead and share. I'm gonna open up the chat so I can see what you guys say. And I actually don't see, oh, here we go. Oh, great, yeah, divorce and changing family structures. That's always a hot button one, yeah. Oh, friends leaving, yes. Yes, Oh, these are all really good. Drug addiction and mental illness, depression, abuse, military deployments. That was actually one we were going to do and we ran out of time. And you're so right. There are some really fabulous things out there, Wendy, but not all of it is gathered together. Oh, these are really good, you guys. Don't stop typing if you want to continue, but I'm going to keep going on to the next part. So looking ahead, we're going to pop up another opportunity, another poll here, an opportunity for you guys to weigh in. We're considering the following possibilities with this project and moving forward. But again, we know that in a true design thinking sense, we need to involve the community that's actually on the ground of potentially running these as programs or as lendable kits. So we would like to hear from you. Which of the following would you like to see become a reality? So we're considering offering a variety of the kits in different sizes available for purchase, as opposed to having to assemble them yourselves. One of the critiques we've heard is that this is great, but I don't have the staff to have my children's person go shopping for a day. They have too much to do. Can't I just buy it somewhere? Second is we've been hearing that people would like help in the consulting services form to assist them in creating their own kits. Third is the potential for smaller kits that are focused around a single picture book and a single idea. And then fourth, if you have something unique that we haven't thought of, we'd love to hear it. So we're going to take about 30 more seconds, I guess, to answer this next one, so we have plenty of time for questions. Oh, and I just want to give Mark a shout out for the being bullied one. That is such a big issue right now. We've thought about that one too. Oh, and Shauna with the traumatic events idea, those are really good, because you're right. It's not necessarily that somebody died in a car accident or fire, but lives can change dramatically, and that trauma can stay with kids for a very long time. Okay, so we can go ahead and close this poll, Ryan. And thank you so much for your feedback. So we see 50% say that a variety of kits available for purchase would be helpful. Consulting services got 60%, and smaller kits focused on a single idea or picture book got 70%. That is fabulous information for us. Thank you so much to all of you. So let's go ahead and have some time for questions. I'm gonna pop open the Q&A thing, although I don't think I see any in there. So either I did my job well, or I didn't do it well at all. But if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the Q&A, and I will probably respond verbally, because it takes me too long to type, and you don't want to listen to that. Oh, Dave, the incarcerated parent was another. Originally, when we designed this, we had 6 kits that we wanted to create. The 3 that we did create, and we also wanted to do one on incarcerated parents, one on deployed parents, and then a final one about the refugee experience, because like I said, David's located in Maine, where we had that really powerful refugee community come together and build a beautiful community. And actually there's a, what is that show? The Today Show just did a piece on the soccer team. Like, now that all these little kids who grew up together are playing sports, how the soccer team has just won 2 state championships. And so it's just this fabulous organism that's taken place. But what we found was that we only had time, again, like in that school parameter of, I think we had 3 or 4 months, we decided it was more important to do less well than to do as much as we could not as well. So we sort of weighted all of those topics and decided that the 3 that we chose would be the heaviest and have the furthest reach initially. So I don't see any further questions. Oh yeah, if they don't come back from deployment. Wendy, that is so true, you're right. Okay, so I don't see any questions. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say thank you. Oh, I seem to have missed all my slides with the, oh, here we go. Here we go. So I'm just gonna say, if you want more information, and I'm gonna stick around till the end anyway, so if you wanna do it in chat, that's great. If you wanna have questions in the formal questions area, I'll leave that open as well. But if you're looking for more information, this is the tiny URL that will take you to the actual Healing Library. That's a tiny URL that will take you to information about my book. And then again, if you want more information about me, or if you want to talk more to me, you can either reach out through Twitter, Bibly. The best way, of course, is to reach out to me through my actual email, and that's my personal email address, meganfemery.com, or my web, meganfemery@gmail.com. Or you can also take a peek at my blog, although I'll say I do very little writing there these days. Mostly what you'll find is a lot of found art that kids made. Will you send out the slides in an email? I'm gonna let Ryan answer that one in just a moment. But further, just in case you wanna see one of the kits in person, I'm actually coming to Long Island later this month for 2 days, and I'm going to give a talk on the Healing Library with the Nassau Library System and the Suffolk Cooperative Library System, both on May 22nd. And I will be bringing one of the kits for everybody to sort of paw through and get a no pun intended, firsthand experience looking at the actual contents. Oh, I love this. Okay, so I'm going to let Ryan answer Wendy's question about will the slides be sent out in an email. So stay tuned, Wendy. But Mark asks, you mentioned growth mindset. A kit on overcoming failure might be helpful. Oh, cool. And I will see you at Suffolk. The kit on failure is something I've been thinking a lot lately about. And I don't want to, no spoilers here. So I won't tell you the couple of kits that I have in the works, but there is something so powerful there about failure and how, especially, Mark, do you work for a school? I'm just curious because schools more and more seem to be focusing on this idea of failure is okay and, fail fast and move on. So it's something that I think would have to be handled really delicately, but I love that idea. And Ryan, you can feel free to jump in here too if you want to share the mic.
Yeah, I'll answer the question that Shauna had over the mic as well, in case you don't see my text response. I'm happy to share the slides as long as Megan is comfortable with that. And
absolutely.
I'll be sending out an evaluation after the fact, and I will include a copy of the slides with that email. Because there is a lot of great information here that, especially with all your links and stuff. So it'd be good.
Yeah, there's a ton.
Yeah.
Does anybody sort of need like a virtual hug after talking about all that trauma? Imagine me just like my arms are stretched outside my screen and I'm sort of giving it a cuddle. So if anybody felt like that was a little bit of a trigger, just know that, 23 people are listening right now. We've had over 1,000 downloads. There are a lot of us out there who are discussing these issues and who very much take to heart how important this work is. And I cannot thank all of you enough for attending today because, it's great to get the word out there, but more importantly, it just makes my little heart grow so much because I know that, there's more of me. There are more people who care and there are more people who want to give this to their communities and really make an impact in a healing, wellness, beneficial way that isn't just lip service. So thank you all so much for the work that you do. And please practice self-care so that you don't experience empathy burnout.
Well, and Megan, this must have been a healing process for you, it sounds like. So it's great that you were able to share it with all of us. And this is all really interesting and inspiring. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Thank you. And hi, Mariah. And if anybody has to go, that's fine, but I'm gonna stick it out and stay on if it takes you a while to come up with your questions, I will be here. And actually, I'll just do a little personal sharing. After this is over, so knowing that all this was happening today, I scheduled an acupuncture appointment for myself, and I'm going to the grocery store to buy fresh vegetables. Like, I will make a delicious juice that will just give me a total pep and pick me up after this. It's going to be great.
Sounds great.